You know, think about it. How many times have you seen adultery as a punchline in a movie or a sitcom? It's almost a classic comedy trope, right? Usually you've got the clueless husband, the whole awkward situation played for laughs. But the way we see it today is, well, it's a universe away from how our ancestors saw it.
So, which one is it? Is it just some personal drama, fodder for a TV show, or is it a crime so serious it actually warrants the death penalty? This massive gap is exactly what we're going to explore. Because, for most of human history, it was absolutely 100% the second one.
I mean, that's no joke. The penalty laid out in the ancient Near East, and yeah, that includes the Old Testament, was death, by stoning, for both people. It's almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around that today. So what in the world happened? How did we get from a capital crime to a comedy bit? Well, the answer starts by completely rethinking what marriage even was back then.
Okay, we have to get this one thing straight. For ancient people, marriage had almost nothing to do with love or finding your soulmate. I know that sounds weird to us, but to understand the law against adultery, you first have to understand the institution it was built to protect.
And this little fact just changes everything. Marriage wasn't a romance. It was a business deal. It was a contract, a literal agreement, usually hammered out by the fathers of two families to link them up for economic or social gain. If you found love, great. That was a bonus, not the point.
So if it wasn't about love, what was the goal? Well, it was all about practical stuff. First, making sure the family property went to the right people. That meant, number two, producing legitimate heirs to inherit that property. It was also about securing the family's future, its immortality, through an unbroken lineage, and of course, creating those powerful social and political alliances. At its heart, marriage was a transaction.
Okay, so if marriage is all about property and legitimate heirs, then what does that make adultery? Well, it logically follows that adultery wasn't seen as a crime of passion or a betrayal of love. It was a crime against property.
And this is where you can see the huge shift in thinking so clearly. For them, adultery was a violation of a husband's property rights. If a man had relations with another man's wife, he was trespassing on his property. For us, the modern view is all about a betrayal of love and trust. They're just two totally different ways of looking at the world.
This cuckoo in the nest idea is honestly the perfect way to understand it. You know how a cuckoo bird lays its egg in some other poor bird's nest? Then the cuckoo chick hatches, kicks out the real baby birds, and tricks the parents into raising it. That's exactly what ancient adultery laws were trying to prevent, an illegitimate kid swooping in and inheriting the family fortune.
This whole property rights thing also explains the really jarring double standard. A married man was not committing adultery if he slept with a prostitute or a concubine or any unmarried woman. And you have to ask, why not? Well, because none of those things threatened the legitimacy of his own heirs. The law didn't really care about the emotional bond of marriage. It cared about one thing, protecting the husband's bloodline.
So you've got thousands of years where marriage is a contract and adultery is a property crime. And then Jesus shows up and he completely flips the script on the entire conversation. This is the moment everything starts to change. So just to quickly recap where we've been, the whole system, the whole ancient legal code was built to protect one single thing, the family legacy. You know, the property, the name, the bloodline that gets passed down from father to son.
And Jesus just shifts the focus completely. He says the most important thing to protect isn't the legacy, it's the relationship, the actual personal, sacred connection between the two people.
See, when people asked him about divorce and marriage laws, Jesus didn't get into a debate about legal codes. He went all the way back to the very beginning, to the ideal described in Genesis. He's basically arguing that marriage isn't just some human contract we came up with. It's a divine thing where two people become one single entity. And in his view, you can't just tear apart what God has fused together. All right, so if marriage is this deep internal bond, then a threat to that bond can't just be a physical act, right? And this is where Jesus takes the whole idea to its most radical, and maybe its most challenging conclusion. This right here is one of the most famous lines from the Sermon on the Mount. And what Jesus does is he moves the scene of the crime. It's not in the bedroom anymore, it's inside the human heart. He's saying the violation, the betrayal, happens way before any physical act ever takes place. Now, it is so important to understand what he meant by lust. The Greek word he used, epithumeo, isn't just a passing thought or, noticing that someone's attractive. It describes a deep, burning desire to possess someone. It's an obsession, an infatuation that is actively chipping away at that one flesh bond you have with your partner.
So here's the bottom line. The focus is no longer about defining which physical actions are over the line itself gets redrawn. And it's drawn inside the heart, which the ancients considered the center of your will, your decisions. The problem isn't just the action, it's the willful choice to entertain a desire that betrays your relationship from the inside out.
Okay, so if the real battle is internal, how are you supposed to fight it? What's the practical game plan for keeping that kind of relational integrity?
Right after his teaching on lust, Jesus gives this really shocking advice. He says if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out. If your hand causes you to sin, chop it off. Now, obviously, this is hyperbole. He wasn't telling people to actually self-mutilate.
So, what's the point of such extreme language? What does that even mean for you and me living our lives today?
Well, it breaks down into a really clear two-step principle. Step 1, you have to be brutally honest and identify what's threatening the integrity of your most important relationships. Step 2, you have to make a decisive and, maybe even a sacrificial choice to just get it out of your life. Whether that's an old flame you keep looking up on Facebook or a TV series that's pulling your mind in the wrong direction, the principle is the same. Act decisively to protect the relationship.
And this quote, which is often attributed to Martin Luther, just sums up the whole journey perfectly. We've gone from a crime of property to a battle of the will. We've seen the massive shift from protecting a legal contract to protecting a deep personal connection. So the question it leaves us with is a big one. What are we guarding more fiercely, our external stuff or our internal integrity?